The story begins with our main protagonist called Hiroshi receiving counseling about his future after high school. However, he isn't quite thrilled to address the topic yet. Meanwhile, his teacher gives him his full support and encourages him to take his time. Outside, he runs into Takafumi, who invites him to the gym, but he declines, saying that there's no point in training his body anymore. As he heads home cursing reality, he is met by Tanishiro and Miss Hina, who extort him as usual. He stops by the gaming shop to receive his pre-ordered game. When it's time to pay, he discovers he is short on cash, which means he accidentally gave Tanishiro more than usual. Because of this, he isn't able to purchase his desired game, so he wanders into another shop. He asks the receptionist for the game he wants, however she bursts out laughing because he requested for the 22nd part of the game, which was just released. She then discourages him by giving reasons why he shouldn't buy the game, so Hiroshi decides to leave. She stops him and reveals she has a game for him that would only cost 10,000 yen, so he buys it. After she hands it to him, he realizes it's not what he requested. He asks for his money back, but she manages to convince him the game is very realistic and so it's worth playing. After arriving home, he immediately logs into the game. He is regarded as a hero and tasked with defeating the demon lord by the goddess. He wakes up looking the same as in reality and observes that the game is indeed realistic, as he can feel touch. The first shock comes after he trips and discovers he can feel pain too. When a girl walks in, she looks so realistic, so Hiroshi taps on his menu to confirm that he's still in a game. Hiroshi asks for her name, so she reminds him she is Alicia, his childhood friend. Her brother arrives and offers him a sample of the apples they are to harvest. As he eats it, he discovers he can also taste food, and as they converse, he asks about the way to Flora Castle. However, his question is met with a sudden tense mood after they hear him talk about Flora Castle and leaving the city. As he moves to go out, Martin tackles him, screaming he won't let his best friend commit exurbance. In tears, Martin thinks he has amnesia, so he explains that their town called Ted is surrounded by a giant moat that protects them from monsters. He emphasizes that no one is allowed outside or inside except some special envoys. After the explanation, he still wishes to go out, so Martin prepares to beat him back to his senses. He thinks it's going to be like other games until he is punched in the face, making him bleed and lose his mind. Martin hits him again so that he lands on the floor. He gets flashbacks of his terrible real life, so he pushes Martin, who instantly falls to his death. Upon seeing this, Alicia loses her cool in the shock, so he runs away. She chases after him, but he manages to escape. At an alley, Riona, who sold the game to him, appears before him as a fairy. She informs him that she is his support, so she tries to check his title tag, but is shocked to find his title is Best Friend Killer. He explains to her that it was an accident, so he asks how to reset the game. However, she tells him there is no reset button. The game has no replay button, just like how real life is. In town, he already has a wanted poster and everyone is aware of his deeds. With Riona's guidance, he goes to get new clothes from a store. Although the seller recognizes Hiroshi, he assures him that he won't report him, and as a result he upped the price higher. Riona suggests he finds Genji, another human who is also playing the game. As they search for Genji in town, Alicia catches up to him. She confesses to still loving him, so she offers to send him to the afterlife quickly. She instantly springs on him with the knife, which was stuck in Martin's mouth, so Hiroshi runs for his life again. They end up in the mountain exhausted, where his title upgrades to running Best Friend Killer, Fleet-Footed Amicide. In frustration, he tells Riona he wants to log out since he has school the next day. However, he is unable to find the menu, so she tells him this is because he is still engaged in combat. Just then, Alicia rushes in and manages to mildly cut him. He complains about how wrong it is for him to feel pain in a game, so Riona tells him that the pain settings have been reduced, even though it is unlike real life. Alicia moves to attack again, so Riona stops her by poking her eyes, and as Hiroshi runs to safety, he is automatically logged. At school, he informs Takafumi to how he was tricked into purchasing a crazy realistic game where you can feel pain. On hearing this, Takafumi remarks that it must indeed be a bad game. When Hiroshi arrives home, he logs back into the game only to pick up the pain from previously being cut in the hand. He checks for medicine, but it doesn't. Its healing properties aren't like normal games. As he begins to throw a tantrum, a man approaches wondering if he's an NPC, so Hiroshi surmises that he must be Genji. He helps to apply the herb, adding that it would take some days for his wounds to start to heal. Genji takes him to a casino where he offers him alcohol, insisting he drinks because it tastes like cola. As they begin conversing, Genji suddenly starts talking to some people that only he can see. He tells Hiroshi he'll be able to see them after some time. It is then revealed that just like Hiroshi, Genji also killed his best friend. He explains that it wasn't an accident. He actually used his judo skills to kill both his best friend and childhood friend. Genji explains that in the game, their stats are a measure of their real-life capabilities. Upon hearing this, Hiroshi thinks it would be impossible for him to clear the game, so Genji adds that someone who seemed just like a high school student already did. Genji then decides decides to help Hiroshi by ratting him out in public as he has to pass the interrogation hurdle to move on. The city guards arrive with a warrant for his arrest, so he tries to flee, but Genji stops him in his tracks with ease. He then collects money from the city guards since he cooperated with them. Hiroshi is then paraded in town where the civilians begin stoning him. He remembers the goddess calling him a hero, and he tells the chief to release him immediately, saying that he is actually a hero. However, the chief isn't moved, stating that he isn't the only one claiming to be a hero as of recent. After Hiroshi is locked in jail, he tries to log out, but the menu tells him he can't in the middle of an event. After several hours he tries again, but it still shows the same message. As he tries to pee, he is frightened after seeing the ghost of Martin. He begins hunting him, saying he has to remember their childhood promise or else he'll keep barfing blood on him. Hiroshi begins screaming for help and terror. Shortly after, a redhead girl clocks in and releases him from his cell. As they walk, she introduces herself as Ms. Arisa and leads him into a room where she tells him to lie down and close his eyes. He begins thinking nasty. However, when he opens his eyes, he is thoroughly bound, and Ms. Arisa informs him she is about to assault him. She shows off a giant saw which she intends to use on him, so he starts screaming. Riona suddenly appears and urges him to endure the assault in order to clear his name. As she begins the process, he ends up wetting himself, scared and in pain. Before Ms. Arisa can continue her work, the chief comes and reveals the interrogation is over. At that moment his title changes, revealing that wetting himself actually saved him. And as he is released, he immediately logs out, promising never to play again. In a memory, Hiroshi recalls the day of his district track event. He was the ace runner of his school. On his way to the toilet, he is approached by a sports writer who he recognizes as a former Olympic champion. At the end of the conversation, he tells Hiroshi to do his best, and as the racers take positions, he talks with his rival, who seems more competitive than usual. The race begins with him on a slow start. However, as he closes the gap, he trips and falls. He wets himself since he didn't eventually use the toilet. After he changes, his sister called Keed tries to cheer him up, but he ends up being hostile towards her. The man meets him again, and this time he tells him he has weak mental strength since he can't perform under pressure. In the present, Keed complains that Hiroshi screams at night when playing games and it distracts her from her studies. However, Hiroshi informs her that she doesn't have to worry anymore since he is quitting the game. She then begins insulting him and concluding that he is only quitting because he can't beat the game. Later, he goes to Riona's shop wanting to sell the terrible game, but she tells him he won't be able to sell it for any price. Instead, she asks him if he knows a person called Soakiro Kamui. She then plays a tape of the young successful man who states in an interview that the game helped shape his life. The man turns out to be Kamui, the only gamer who cleared the awful game. She then proceeds to show Hiroshi a walkthrough made by Kamui. When he opens the guide, the contents turns out to be full of insults and videos of him cursing the readers. In the guide, he instructs Hiroshi on exercise routines and concerning his killer childhood friend. He tells him the trick is to find a way to reach her without fighting. After closing the guide, Riona tells him she would marry the next person to clear the game. However, Hiroshi doesn't fall for her tricks. She then persuades him with her feminine charm, so he eventually logs in to resume from when he wetted himself. The chief leads Hiroshi through an underground passage which leads them to the mansion of the queen. Inside, he meets with the captain of the city guards called Tesla, who urges him to dine with him. Tesla reveals that he investigated the scene himself and discovered that Martin's death was an accident, so Hiroshi is acquitted. As Hiroshi heads home, the townsfolk stone him in disbelief of his innocence, and after avoiding them, Riona tells him he has to obtain money to get tools. She suggests he steals from some weak folks, but he refuses, so he ends up in a shady office where jobs can be given to pretty much anyone. Hiroshi gets picky with the job options, so the owner gets angry at him, and he eventually goes back to Genji in hopes of borrowing money from him. However, they don't get along, so Genji refuses to lend him anything. As they get into a fight, Genji pulls out his brass knuckles, but Hiroshi manages to avoid it and pulls his hair extremely hard. At that moment, Martin's ghost appears again and freaks Hiroshi out. Shortly after, Genji also experiences something similar. This makes them settle their differences, and so Genji ends up giving him some money. Once outside, Hiroshi chooses a fancy store to shop in. The attendant introduces herself as Melissa, and Hiroshi orders 2 smoke bombs which are sold for 20 geld apiece. However, Melissa decides to sell it to him for a total of 50 geld after noticing his situation. She also forces him to pay an extra fee for choosing to shop there. Hiroshi goes back home to retrieve his sword, but once inside, Alicia is waiting to ambush him. He quickly uses the smoke bomb, but nothing happens because he didn't ignite the fuse. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Alicia attacks but is suddenly blocked by someone who is revealed to be Ms. Arisa. Despite Ms. Arisa's presence, Alicia still attacks Hiroshi. As the two girls begin fighting, Alicia reveals herself to be quite powerful with a lot of extra knives. She manages to knock the knives off her hands, but Alicia strikes her with her feet and renders her unconscious with a powerful kick. Remembering the advice of Kamui, Hiroshi doesn't run anymore. As she attacks, he touches her on the chest hoping for her to be embarrassed, but instead she kicks him in disgust. Martin appears as his sister tries to send Hiroshi to meet him in the afterlife, so Hiroshi thinks quickly and confesses to loving her. This stops her in the nick of time, so she appears confused and disoriented. She ends up leaving, thus making Hiroshi feel sad about how he treated Alicia after the situation initially. Later, he goes to a giant tree, where Martin appears. He apologizes to him and as a result his spirit is forced into the afterlife. At that moment, he gets memories of their childhood together when they promised to be best friends forever. Shortly after Riona arrives, so they plan what to do next. However, they notice the town is on fire. They rush into town to find everything chaotic as the townsfolk push him aside to run to safety. He then enters a blacksmith shop to mend his sword, but he reveals he doesn't have time for that since the goblins have invaded the city. Hiroshi begins removing the rust on his blade himself, but he gets frustrated as it is taking too long to do. He tries to go out with the rusty sword, but Riona stops him, telling him that he'll die if he attacks irrationally. She reveals that something terrible happens if Hiroshi dies in the game. Hiroshi jumps to the conclusion that he would also die in real life, but she rests his mind, stating that is not the case. She reveals that his game and console break when he dies in the game, and tells him this is the real reason why the game is called Pui and is shunned by most people. She suggests he logs out so he can view Kamui's walkthrough, but Hiroshi begs to take a peek at the goblins before logging out. As he peeks, he discovers a little girl is about to be attacked by a goblin. He instantly attempts to rush to her aid, but Riona pulls him back, insisting that he doesn't have to risk his life for an NPC. Luckily, the city guards arrive to protect the child, but the goblins easily defeat the guards one by ripping off their arms. After defeating all the guards, Riona distracts the goblins so Hiroshi can pick up the child to escape. However, he finds another goblin in front of him. He then lets the girl run through an alley, but a goblin manages to slip past him in pursuit of her, so he chases after it. As he runs with determination, he suddenly gets a burst of speed which he uses to save the girl. Although he saved the child, the goblins catch up to them shortly after, but this time Tesla appears in the scene. He slays the goblin instantly with a slash of lightning. After the girl is escorted away, Tesla offers Hiroshi a job as a mercenary, to which he accepts instantly. After that, he logs out of the game. The following school day, Takafumi notices he looks happier than usual. He adds that maybe he complains about the game because he loves it. At home, he watches the walkthrough to learn how to leave the village. Kamui explains all the available options, ending with the fact that joining the city guard is the most difficult route to take. In the game, he heads out with Tesla, who informs him that they are to greet the queen before going to the training grounds. At the palace, the queen suddenly hugs him to wish him farewell in his endeavor. At the training ground, Tesla introduces two other recruits called Granada and Palu. Shortly after, Bob shows the new recruits their lodgings. In the room, he finds his uniform, so he tells Riona to head out while he changes. After, they head to the training ground where they meet the chief, who introduces himself as Amos, their instructor. He is approached by a girl named Kathy, who has also taken a liking to him. He begins his training with Amos, but apparently he is too amateurish in his attacks. He is defeated easily, so everyone remarks on how weak he is. However, Granada easily defeats Amos, so he ends the training session. After that, everyone avoids him since he is incredibly weak. The next day, he arrives late for training. He begs Amos to tutor him, but he has already lost hope in his abilities, telling him that he has no talent and that there's nothing 5 days of training can do for him. Later, Kathy offers to help him out, so he manages to get through the second day. On the third day, he is paired with Granada for a mock battle, but is easily defeated as expected. They tell him to quit or he has to start paying them for letting him stay. Later, he goes to the counselor's offices as Riona suggested, where he complains that he is being extorted and made fun of. However, the counselor also recommends he quits. As he leaves, he meets with Kathy, who tells him that the counselor is actually a doctor who only treats injuries and illnesses. She suggests he turns to God in prayers if he has a problem. So, Hiroshi heads to the church thinking it is a quest in the game. Here he meets a nun who douses him in water as a form of cleansing, but ends up catching a cold as a result. On the fourth day, he still gets beaten. They try to extort him again, but he doesn't give them any money, so Palu challenges him to a duel. They begin, and just after a short while Hiroshi is being beaten mercilessly. Kathy calls on Amos to intervene, but he dismisses everything as part of training. Since Hiroshi and Kathy are friends, the group tries to bully her also, so she denies knowing him right in front of him. On the last day, there's a commotion in the morning because Granada can't find his boot. He is later told it has been found in stinky water, so he gets emotional since his grandmother made it for him. Some moments later, his sword goes missing too, so his fellow soldiers begin laughing at him. Everyone helps him look for it, but it is nowhere to be seen. However, he later finds the sword in a pile of poop. He attacks Hiroshi, accusing him of being the perpetrator, but the others take his side. Again, there's another commotion and the nurse explains her underwear has gone missing. However, they manage to quickly find it sticking out of Granada's bag. She laments how her privacy has been invaded, so the other soldiers pick on Granada for being a bad boy. They call him a goblin-faced perv, and even Palu disowns him. Later, Amos announces that Granada has decided to quit being a guard, but just then Tesla arrives holding a letter stating the person who stole Granada's sword was Amos, and the letter was written by Palu. Tesla then asks about Amos's conduct as an instructor, so Kathy reveals that they were bullying Hiroshi while he did nothing. Tesla relieves Amos of his duties, and so Kathy and the rest of the group apologize to Hiroshi. That night, Riona reveals she was the one behind everything that happened. In addition, she also reveals that she once met Kamui in the game 10 years ago. He was so majestic that she asked him out. However, he declines, saying he isn't into women with saggy eyes, so she swore to have her revenge by getting someone else to clear the game. He logs out only to find Keat in his room. She looks worried, but she lies that she wouldn't want him dying in a game since it will shame the family. The next time he logs in, two new fighters called Mizarisa and Alicia join the guard. Tesla assigns Hiroshi to patrol the Eastern District, but that's where Genji hangs out. He also orders him to take Mizarisa and Alicia along with him. They then move out to patrol as instructed, but Hiroshi is very wary of Alicia. As they walk, they encounter a thief who brushes Hiroshi aside, but he is taken down instantly by Alicia, who severs his hands. Afterwards, they question the thief, who confesses to being lured into stealing. They track the boss to the casino. Here they meet many rascals with whom they engage in combat. Hiroshi tries to free the hostage, but it turns out Genji is the boss of the group. He takes Hiroshi hostage and begins strangling him. However, he manages to free himself and tells the others to let him handle Genji. But before they begin their battle, Alicia punches him in the stomach, saying they needed to end the farce. Afterwards, they rounded up Genji and his gang and sent them to prison. The alert for a goblin invasion is sounded. However, Hiroshi has a running stomach, so he quickly goes to use the toilet. Inside, he finds a goblin peeking at him. He freaks out but is saved in time by Mizarisa, who also confesses to spying. He heads out with Riona to meet with Tesla and the guards who are about to engage the goblins. They begin the battle with the guards easily becoming goblin fodder, so only Tesla manages to hold his own against them until Mizarisa arrives, and behind her is Alicia. She dices the goblins like garlic easily, and as the battle continues, Kathy comes with a report that a powerful goblin has breached the gate and is approaching the queen's mansion. Arriving at the scene, Hiroshi finds a giant one-eyed goblin wreaking havoc. Tesla engages the goblin himself while he watches in fear. Just then, Mizarisa and Alicia arrive at the scene. Mizarisa tries to join Tesla, but she is kicked in the stomach and rendered unconscious. Upon seeing this, Alicia rushes in and the three-way fight becomes even more tense and fast-paced. Some soldiers bring in a cage of captured goblins, which makes the one-eyed goblin lose his cool, and so Tesla slashes it. However, Hiroshi is worried about Kamui's warning, so he tells Tesla not to finish the goblin off yet. Hiroshi then reveals that Tesla is scheming something. However, he quickly kills the goblin, and so the queen comes out of her mansion. She reveals that they use the goblins to instill fear in the citizens and also keep other nations off their kingdom. Tesla then kills the remaining guards, stating he also has to kill Hiroshi since he has learned of their secret. Tesla prepares to attack with a more advanced move, but when he does, Alicia runs into his blade. Hiroshi holds her in despair, but she dies with a smile on her face shortly after. As Tesla prepares to attack again, Hiroshi manages to parry his blade, and he does it a second time surprisingly, remembering the words of Kamui, who revealed to him the only trick to the game and in the real world is the overwhelming determination not to give up. He finally unlocks his power, which he uses to fight on, even footing with Tesla. Eventually, he gets an opening to stab him, but his sword snaps in two. As Tesla tries to finish him off, he gets a vision of Martin, who offers to help him in his battle. Tesla's sword then breaks and his sword turns into a magical blade. On seeing this development, Tesla charges for his ultimate lightning attack. Although Hiroshi is prepared, the queen comes from behind and weakens his knee, and so he is logged out because he lost. On the phone, he tells Riona his console also got fried, but she offers to let him rent hers. But just then, new content displays on the walkthrough. Kamui reveals there's a way for him to continue the game an hour before he dies, so he becomes motivated. Afterwards, he starts training his body by running. At school, Takafumi tells him that he has changed a lot, and at that moment, the bullies try to extort him again, but just then he recalls Tesla stabbing him. So he screams out, shouting he would kill him. This freaks the bullies out, so they finally leave him alone. After school, Riona meets up with him to hand him the new console, and so he goes back home to continue his Pui game. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.